Welcome to the Leaderonomics show, and today we are at the Southeast Asian SME Forum, and with me is Betty Lim, your Managing Director of Finex Company based in Vietnam.
Yes.
Betty, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Good morning.
Betty, tell us a little bit of background, and you are actually Malaysian, but you ended up working and now living in Vietnam, and your company is in Vietnam. Tell us a little bit of your background, how you got there.
Okay. I'm chartered accountant myself from the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Ireland, and I was working in Europe for quite many years, about 6-7 years, before I relocated back to Asia. So when I came back to Asia, I happened to went to Vietnam for a short trip, and that's where I meet my friends and who told me there are opportunities over there. So then I actually started my food down in Vietnam by working with a company, and that company is a frozen food import company where I was the GM and also the CFO in the company. And not long after that, I saw there's lots of opportunity and was like, well, you know, why am I doing in an employment? So, and I started my own company, which is where Finex was born. Yeah, so I have a local partner, and she's a brilliant lady. We really work out our partnership together very well until today. So I manage the external part and she managed the internal part.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about some of the challenges of working in a different country, in Vietnam in this case.
Right. The first challenge that I can come across is, of course, the language barrier. So
and how did you overcome that?
Well, I was a little bit lucky where within the first 6 months when I was in Vietnam, I just picked up the language.
That easier? Just picked it up?
Well, it's just like when you're being thrown into the pool and you got to swim, it's like you either swim or you got drowned, you know, so...
And so you swam.
Yes, exactly. But it was a hard work, you know, I was with my notebook and virtually writing every single word down and translating it on my own so-called translation. So that's where I learned. And I also trained myself on listening. So every day when I get back home, I just turn on the TV for 30 minutes, you know. Whether I understand or not understand, I don't care, but I just turn on the TV and, you know, listen to the Vietnamese people speaking, and that's where I train my ears. And just within 3 months, you will be amazed that, oh my God, the word just come directly.
So language is one challenge. What were some of the other challenges?
Language was one challenge. Second challenge is the culture. Because the way Malaysians work, and because I was working in Europe in the past, it was completely different. And it is to know about how the local people work, the mentality, you know, the way they behave.
So it's very different from, they don't work like Europeans, huh?
No, definitely. and because Vietnam is a socialist country, so their mindset, you know, everything is very socialist. So to manage them as a manager, it is, you know, it will be a challenge for at least for the first time to manage them until you really so-called catch up the tactic.
Were there other challenges? I mean, other than culture and language?
Then it would be the long processes, you know, the red tapes, and of course, the bureaucracy and well, so-called pocket money for the local authority, and all these frequent changes in the regulations, you know, where if you are a foreigner and you do not know the local language, it will be quite impossible to really catch up what is the changes in the local regulations, because they don't publish and they don't really tell you, so you really need to go and check up and get yourself updated.
So would you recommend, you know, other people doing the same thing you did? You know, relocating to new countries and experiencing new things and
Sure. I mean, this one takes up the courage and commitment. Many of my friends say, Betty, you're crazy. I mean, you end up yourself in Vietnam and don't know doing what. So, but because I was living out of the country, out of Malaysia for quite some time, I left Malaysia when I was 19 years old and worked in Europe. So to me, living in another country, it's not so difficult, but in Vietnam it's a little bit challenging because I started without knowing the language. So going to a restaurant, talking to the taxi driver, and buying things is always a challenge, you know. But the moment if you're committed to learn the language, then nothing is impossible.
Now, your company does a lot of work in terms of helping global organizations move into Vietnam and explore business in Vietnam.
Yes.
What are some of the things that, if a typical company wants to move to Vietnam or expand their boundaries, let's say a Malaysian or Singapore or Indonesian company wants to move there, what were some of the considerations that these companies need to make?
The first thing is they must know what they need to do there. See, many companies, they are trying to expand their business there, not in terms of expanding their current operation.
Yep.
Well, I would say not all of them, but some of them want to expand their current operation. But many of them are just going in to look at what are the opportunities that I can do, because they hear about Vietnam all the time.
Right. Yeah, Vietnam and China, I guess.
Yeah, they thought, well, there's a gold mine, and I'm going to dig the gold mine. But hello, you need to know where, what to do,
where to start,
where to start and things like that. So that is one of the considerations, because Vietnam, as I mentioned, is a socialist country. They do not open up all the sectors for foreigners, but they agree to open up some sectors as per the WTO agreement, which is signed in 2007.
Okay.
So as per the WTO agreement, quite many sectors already open up, but there are still some which the government want to retain for their own people. So before an investor who wants to get in, it's the first thing they need to know is what are the business that they want to do, and whether this business is allowable. Then the second thing is the commitment. You see, many businesses, what they're trying to do is, when they set up a business there, they just want
instant profit.
They just want to say, okay, I'm going to put my investment in and how much money I can get out. And I do not want to commit myself staying in Vietnam, because Vietnam infrastructure is definitely not any better than Malaysia and Singapore. But when you set up a new business there, in a new country, with a new culture, with a new language, with a new
fully
government,
committed to it.
yes, at least for the first 6 months or 1 year, they got to send someone or be there themselves to manage the business. And many companies who does not do that,
they fail miserably.
I see that they are not doing very well, or they need to exit the country.
And is that quite common? I mean, companies setting up and then leaving almost immediately?
Well, not immediately, but
over a period of time.
Over a period of time.
Because they're not committed.
Yes, it's just like for this company, yes, they have also business in their home country. So what they do is that they only go to Vietnam probably few days a month. Now, in that few days a month, they let the local staff, which is a local Vietnamese staff, to run the business. Now, if the local Vietnamese staff is so good that can run the business, then
that's fine.
Most likely they don't need you anymore. Yeah, and that's why the risk is there, because many investors who doesn't spend time in a country, who rely on the local people to run the business, at the end of the day, they are being cheated.
So first thing is research. Second thing is really commit yourself. Is there other things that
then of course is the investment part, right? Because according to the local Vietnamese government, they wanted the investor to have a commitment. So depending on the different trades of industry, certain trade, the government want to have a commitment of the amount of capital. And this amount of capital has to be brought into the country within the 1 year of the license, or as per the license, whatever the terms and regulations, when they got a consultant to help them to do. So this amount of investment is the commitment that they have to put in. But many investors, they just, I just put in to get my license and then I'll deal with it later. But, at the end of the day, they got stuck there. And of course,
so funding
is, and in Vietnam, we're all talking about US dollars. So for a Malaysian company who invests in Vietnam, you can imagine whatever they need to invest there is triple of what they need to pay from ringgit, So
it can be a costly investment, but does it pay back in the long run? I guess the fact that you're still there,
of course,
obviously does.
I mean, to me, the way I see the Vietnam economy, it definitely has much more opportunity compared to
many of the Southeast Asian,
many of the other Southeast Asian countries, due to its geographical locations and populations. Populations in Vietnam is 90 million population. Is almost 3 times and 4 times of Malaysia, and out of the 90 million population, 65-70% are working class people who are less than 45 years old. So there are lots of resources there, but is how to use these resources to dig the gold mine, because you can't dig it yourself.
Final question. If you were to, if like Vietnam is one country that you're in now. If you were to relocate to somewhere else in Asia, what country would it be, and what other gold mines do you see in Asia?
What are the gold mines that I've seen? I think the next one probably is the other next coming up country in the Southeast Asia that I can see it's growing is the Indochina region, and that's why I'm going for my Indochina tour this year, right? I'm seeing Cambodia is probably the next upcoming market, even though they have a smaller populations compared to Vietnam, but the government is very, very open. They have a very good advisor behind, and they are really supporting foreign investment to go in. So to get a license in Cambodia, it's very easy and very straightforward compared to Vietnam, right? And the other region is probably the other Southeast Asia, Indochina region, you see. But when you ask me where do I want to end up, then probably it's Bangkok, because it's a nice country and shopping
so
and
it's
the food.
Thailand.
That's almost, a woman's heaven. Yeah.
And men too, right? Anyway, Betty, thanks a lot for being on our show. We have Betty Lim, founder of Finex Company, based in Vietnam, here on the Leaderonomics show. Betty, thank you again.
Thank you.